Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 5th Annual Deep Valley Book Festival. Thank you for joining us today for Behind the Scenes, the Fiction Writer Panel discussion. This discussion was pre-recorded so you can stream it in the safety and comfort of your own home. We appreciate you helping us to make this book festival a success despite the pandemic. My name is Chelsea Farr, and I'm the editor-in-chief for Pointe Publishing. We're joined today by 5 fiction writers to discuss their approaches to and experiences with writing. I'll start by introducing our panelists, and then we'll launch right into our Q&A session. If you have any follow-up questions for any of the writers, you'll be able to find their contact information on their respective author pages on the Deep Valley Book Festival website. So first up, we have Sarah Byron. She's the young adult author of The Last Thing You Said and Cold Day in the Sun, both of which take place in a fictionalized lake town in the Brainerd, Minnesota area. She has an MFA in creative writing from Minnesota State University in Mankato. She recently moved to Wisconsin with her husband and their 2 teenagers. Next up is Raven Ekman. She is a dark fantasy writer and a freelance editor from Pennsylvania. She obtained her BA in English with a concentration in creative writing from Arcadia University. Her debut novel, Shadowspeak, will be published by Pointe Publishing in early 2021. Kirsten Hall, over here, is the writer of 5 books with 4 more in the works for 2020 and 2021. Because of her varied interests, she writes in several different genres and for all age groups. Kirsten's also had a long career in sales, presenting, and publishing. She lives in Minnesota with her 2 youngest sons. Lydia Emma Niebuhr published the first of 11 books for middle grade readers in 2010. These were followed with 1 historical fiction before writing to the cozy mystery genre. The 4th mystery is being written for the Tad Wheeler series. She and her husband live on a farm near Corning, Minnesota. And then finally, we have Susan Stradiato. She's the author of 3 fantasy novellas, a fantasy short story, a romance novel, and 2 romance novelettes. She has 3 romance novels in production under the pen name Julia O'Green, and she will be releasing a fantasy series involving dragons in 2021. She lives in Minnesota with her spouse, their 3 children, and 2 fur babies. All right, so now you know all of our panelists here. So to kind of open up the floor, we'll start with Sarah and just kind of go down the line in the order I introduced you guys in. Do you remember when and why you first thought about becoming an author? And if you could give yourself, your younger self, writing advice, what would it be?
Well, I started writing at a pretty young age. In my elementary school, we had writers in residence who came in and taught us different poetry and short stories and that sort of thing. So I started writing at a pretty young age, I would say about 3rd grade. And then as I moved through junior high and high school, I continued to take classes, mainly through Compass out of St. Paul. And then when I was in college, I also focused my English degree on creative writing and subsequently obtained my MFA from Mankato State University. It was still known, I believe, as Mankato State University at that time. So if I could give my younger self any advice, it would be to not waste so much time. Because I have a lot of interests, and so I did a lot of other things as well. And so I had this very long career in retail management, and I got interested in human resources and a lot of other things and marketing. And so I would say just focus on one thing and don't wait too long.
All right, and next up we have Raven.
So I actually started writing after I read Twilight, and I decided I wanted to do a werewolf story. Like, I didn't want vampires, but I wanted some werewolves. So I started there, and it was kind of like the short novellas. I wasn't really sure exactly what I was doing because I just was completely branching off into something different for me. And then I actually practiced writing when I got into fan fiction. So just kind of like completely went with it with like characters that I loved. And it really kind of helped me decide like what perspectives I liked and what kind of genres then and everything like that. In terms of writing advice for my younger self and even myself now is don't let the bad days win. So if you're writing and like a writer's block or you just kind of can't connect with a character, just don't stop, because I actually ended up stopping after when I graduated, and it took me about 4 years to finally then get back in and kind of finally find myself again as a writer.
That's good advice. And next up, we have Kirsten Hall. I just want to apologize in advance. My internet connection's a little spotty, so bear with me here.
Okay. Well, my adventure into books started when I was very young, 3, 4. My mom has a ton of books. And she also used to be a part of the Book of the Month Club. I don't know, Ray and Chelsea wouldn't remember these, but do you guys remember those Book of the Month Club with the little catalogs that came in? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah. My mom would look through them and she would order her books, and then she'd give me the catalog, and I'd go scurrying off into my room and I'd make intense lists of everything I wanted. Not that I got them, but I made lists. So occasionally I would get one book, and that was pretty neat. But that's what started me on it. And then and I'm a book smeller. Do you guys smell books?
Sniffer.
Oh yeah. No?
Yes.
Anyway, so yeah,
Yes, I think most people do.
yeah, I'm a book smeller, and I got that from my mom as well. But in about 2nd or 3rd grade, I took all of my children's books and I turned them into scripts, and I had my teachers, I forced my teachers basically to have the class put on these plays, whether it was, Where the Wild Things Are, or, some Shel Silverstein or Dr. Seuss or whatever. I'm pretty sure my teachers hated me. But anyway, yeah, that was my foray into my adventure of books. The one thing I would tell my younger self is start sooner. Don't listen to the naysayers. And it does not matter what your family, your friends, your extended relatives, or what the people at church think. I listened to so many people who told me, oh, you shouldn't do that. That's not a real job, or whatever the case may be, or it's not good enough, or whatever. And don't listen to other people. If you know you can do it, just go out and do it. There you go. That's my advice.
Thank you. And that is good advice. Next up, we have Lydia Emma Niebuhr.
Well, I think I entered my first writing contest when I was in high school, and it was very, very bad. I know, but I didn't have a lot of encouragement to do writing. I went to a small school, didn't have time for a lot of other than essential subjects. But my other love was science, and I thought science would be better because I could at least make a living with it. I wasn't sure I could as a writer. And I went to way back when it was Mankato State College. Now I'm really dating myself, but but I did start writing even while I was a chemist. That's what my degree was in. I had my master's in chemistry. So this writing now in this Cozy Mystery series is a stretch for me, because I'm going from scientific facts kind of writing to something that's more, you have more input as far as feelings and stuff. And so I'm learning that, and I'm getting a lot of help from Raven, which I really appreciate. But the thing is that if I were going to talk to myself now, I would say, don't give it up. Keep going with it, even while you're in college. Although I didn't really have a lot of time in college, but all those years when I was working, there were times, and some of you know that one of my very first book was written in one of the plants in a cold room, sitting on a pallet. So I just finally took it up, and but just I would have told myself earlier on, don't give up, don't listen to everybody, like you said, you know. So that's would be my advice to me.
All right, good. And next we have Susan.
Hi. So as far as when I started writing, I normally say that I started in 2017. That's when I got extremely serious about wanting to get my work out there. I started because I needed a diversion. My son we were butting heads a little bit when he was in school because he didn't want me to manage his time. And I had historically managed my older two children's time pretty strictly, as I'm by trade a project manager. So I had to put that energy somewhere else. And I put it into my fantasy world, Ketera, which I've released 3 novellas, and I actually do have a novel coming out in 2020 in that world as well, following the novellas. And so that was really my push into wanting to do more full-time writing. I have, like everybody else on this panel, I think, written since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. I had an 11th grade English teacher who encouraged us to pull out the thesaurus and expand our vocabulary. And I got so fed up with it at one point that I changed about every single word in my paper, and I got an A+ on it. And from then on, I'm like, wow, it actually sounded good. It was really well done. I was impressed with myself. After that, I wrote a play for my French class that was performed for, you know, the school and all of our parents and anybody that bought a ticket and wanted to come. So I've written a lot in high school that actually got noticed. My mother told me at one point that she found some old poems of mine from when I was about 12. I read one of them and promptly threw the rest away because they were not so good, but entertaining anyway. As far as what I would tell my younger self, it probably aligns with what everybody else has said. Don't stop. If you've got a passion for it, feed that passion no matter what anybody else tells you, because I got way distracted and I spent 20 years doing project management, and it's not as fulfilling to me as writing or even editing or giving feedback or beta reading or, you know, all of those things that go along with publishing now. So I am thankful for that career path because it helped me learn a lot about marketing and how to get my own work out there once I transitioned back to this. But still, I wish I had been producing novels for those 20 years while I was just raising kids and working a full-time corporate job. I would be a lot farther along in my writing career at this point.
That's a really wide range of experiences that our 5 panelists have given us. A lot of different tales to tell there, but I think the common denominator is that at heart they're all storytellers, and there's a lot that we can learn from them. Our next question for you guys is, are there any particular themes or character arcs that you like to explore in your writing? And we'll just kind of go in that same order again.
I write young adult fiction, so my characters are teenagers. So I would say that a lot of what I write focuses on relationships. First love is a favorite thing of mine to write, but I also like to explore family relationships and friendships as well, and how those play into those kind of coming of age stories, and how our relationships help us develop as, you know, human beings as well. So, and how my characters grow. So I would say that those are probably my top things that I like to write about.
All right, good. Those are definitely important themes. Next we have Raven.
So I love something with layers. So like the good versus bad story arcs, the redemption, like corruption, survival. Like it's kind of got to have a little bit of everything when I write. I also love a little bit of romance. Like it doesn't have to maybe be the whole story, but like just something where you kind of have that swoon-worthy character that like you kind of want at the same time your main character definitely wants, but we don't know what's going to happen with them. So there's that. Um, and then it's just anything that I can have like the detail to. Like I just kind of want something that really plays off of a bottom story. Like so you have one story and then suddenly 4 different stories come into play, but it all works out.
All right, it's a multi-layered approach.
Yeah.
Nice. Next we have Kirsten Hall.
I tend to be most interested in the inner workings of people's thoughts and reasonings. What makes them tick? How did they get to their final decision? What was the impetus and their thought process that got to them to their final destination? Internal and external dynamics of their environment. But most of the time, I don't start out really with much on the character except what I know is going to happen in the story. So while the story is being laid out, that's when the character's personality starts showing through. So I know what's going to happen in the story. And there's that line where, I just watch the characters and, what they do and what they say, and then I just report on it. That's kind of how I put my stories together. So yeah, I don't go in with, it's like, well, this is going to happen and we're going to throw that person in there and we're going to see what happens. Is pretty much
So
how
kind
I
of
write.
bring the characters as you write.
Yeah.
All right, good. And so next we have Lydia.
Okay, the first 11 books were written for middle grade readers, so that's totally different than what I'm doing now. But in those, I always wanted the main character or characters do something positive. A lot of those books addressed issues that kids that age face: possible divorce, step parent, cancer in one of them. But then there's some that are just plain funny, just fun. And in those, a lot of times, in many of them, it's that the time of life when boys start being aware of girls in junior high, and some of that can bring a lot of humor to it. And because of that, I always told everybody that, and my little business card that has my pen name on says there's no violence and no bad language, because number one, I don't like to hear it. I can't write it. So I get a lot of grief from our writers group because I finally used the word damn in one of the cozy mysteries. But other than that, I can't do that. But what I'm moving into this new genre now, I find that I have got to be more descriptive, because I would give kind of what I would call the skeleton of a story and then go back and kind of add some flesh to the bones and I'm learning to do that much better now. But I still I can't do bad language, foul language. I can't write graphic scenes or something that is gruesomely violent. If you're writing a mystery about murder, there is going to be some violence, but it's not going to be gruesome violence. To answer the question, the arc for mine is the main character has to be positive. I want him to come out or her to come out at the end as the good guy, the good woman. And I have I'm still learning to write romance parts of it. Can't get to the sexual part yet. Can't get that graphic. But, the cozy mystery doesn't need that. It can have this implied romance.
The cozy mystery genre is pretty cool like that you can have the romance and the suspense and the mystery without getting sidetracked with a whole bunch of extra details, the sexual component, the violence. And so far what I'm hearing from everybody is that your methods, the themes that you like, change as you write and as you continue in your careers as authors. Next up, we're going to hear from Susan.
So I would second the people who have said that they write about family conditions. It's a little odd in fantasy to say that that's the main theme that you would write about, but I do find that most of my fantasy stories end up having a big focus on the main character's family connections or found family connections. I am in the Katerin Tales. I do have a lot of found family tropes embedded in there that you would see develop throughout the trilogy that's released right now and continue to develop in the one that's coming. Secondarily to that, I would say any other interpersonal relationships. I think that most stories have to involve how people interact with other people. So it's hard for me to see a story that focuses, and this is personal, I know that there are a lot of fantasy readers out there that just really love the political side of it, the fighting side of it. But it's the interpersonal and how the ties between people work in my fantasy world that really drive my stories. As far as a character arc goes, in a word, any damaged character I absolutely love writing. I like women who don't necessarily know that they have growth to be had. And by the end of the story, they have a very large growth arc. I've actually taken some criticism from writers groups in early stories about this character seems too confident, too strong, everything's going their way. But it doesn't stay that way. So I enjoy subverting that almost, that strong woman personality and turning it into she's going to become stronger because she learns what her weaknesses are. As far as male characters go, I like male characters who seem either stern or harsh, but they are really hiding a softer side. And so I enjoy the romance arc. I also I've got a romance novel out. I have 2 that are complete and just waiting for the full series to be done so that I can do a release path. But in all of them, there is a quote unquote strong softie involved. So that's my favorite male character arc, is that you see that softness come out subtly throughout the story. So that's mine.
What do you do when you have writer's block? So we'll start again with Sarah.
Oh, what do I do? Usually the dishes. Or something else that is completely unrelated to writing. Or I also have a tendency to write out of order. So if I come in and I know that I have to write a certain scene and it's just not working for me, I'll just skip ahead and write something different. So I'll write something that feels better to me at that time. So that may be a kissing scene. It could be. Or I also really like writing scenes with a lot of tension and a lot of, kind of sparring in the dialogue. So I may jump ahead to write a scene like that. And so usually what happens then is once I get going, then I can just easily go back to the scene that I'm supposed to be writing, or, whatever is coming next. So.
That's great advice. Yeah, you don't have to write in order. All right. Next, so Raven.
So I actually love doing that. Like when I actually first started writing Shadowspeak, I wrote the ending first because I could for the life of me figure out how to start it. I really didn't. I was like, I have the middle, the ending, and that beginning was just kind of like, well, it doesn't need to happen. Like I can just have the end. I'm like, no, it has to happen. So past me would have been, if I had a writer's block, I probably would just have stopped and called it a day, been like, oh, okay, I guess I'm not writing today. So I know you're supposed to write anything, whether it's like the list, notes, like anything in regards to like as long as you're writing. Sometimes I listen to music, kind of see if I can visualize the scene and then figure out if the song, depending on again what scene I'm trying to write, helps. Or like Sarah had said, I just kind of, okay, well, if this scene's not working, let me try maybe like the next part or something that would come to mind inspiration wise. And then once I get started, hopefully then I either get that written or I can go back. But just keep writing.
All right, well, for me personally, I have to have a hard deadline staring me down. Otherwise, I will do everything besides what I'm supposed to be doing. So I best work under pressure. And once I have that hard deadline staring me down and I sit down, it should be quiet because I'm very much a squirrel tendency, like, ooh, squirrel. And then I go running off in another direction very easily. I should not answer my phone. I should not look at emails, and I should definitely not look at social media. I am open to having healthy snacks, but I'm totally okay with non-healthy snacks being nearby. Plenty of coffee, water, and tea. And because once I get going, I write on a jag. I mean, I will write 40,000 words, boom. And it has to be. Because once it's going, I mean, it's like a movie in my head. So, I mean, you can't walk out of the movie, so you just keep going, But yeah, I also tend to jump around when I write. I never write in order. And a lot of the times I will sit there and write the page and go, oh, that doesn't work. And then I space and start the page again. I never throw away something I've already written because I may go back and pilfer from it. Plus I know I have a memory the size of a gnat. So if I write something and go, oh, that looks good. Oh, maybe we could do that better. Literally 37 seconds later, I'll be like, oh, what did I write? So I don't want to forget that. So yeah, snacks, preferably healthy, but okay with Twinkies, and quiet. And you got to give me just lock me in a solitary room for about a week and I will produce a book, and there you go. Other than that, prior to that, I'm all over the place. I have no discipline whatsoever. Yeah.
So you need a little to give yourself some tough love there, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Let's hear from Lydia next.
Well, when I need to get kind of in a mood to be serious about writing, I play classical music, and it's fun. For those of you who have seen my writing center, which is an outdoor 3-season gazebo. In summer, when it's warm, you have the windows open. The birds come hopping by and watch me. And so it's kind of fun, to be a little bit distracted by them. But if I'm really stuck, I go in and bake cookies. That's what I do. But I agree with Kirsten. I never throw anything out. I always have an auxiliary page to my novel. And those things that I don't know when I'm going to use them, I cut and paste them in this other paper, this other, other document, so that they're there, because all of a sudden I'm going, if I erased it, then it's like, why did I do that? But yeah, if it's in another page, that's fine. I can do that, but it doesn't have to be in the main document. So I do that. But out here, there's many ways to kind of get back on track. I mean, we've got 147 acres I can walk around on, well, on most of it, but at least on 10 of them, and go around and just kind of clear my head. And that's what I do. And that writing center is basically, I'm isolated from the house. And so, and if I really get desperate, I can turn on the Faribault, Minnesota radio station and listen to the farm markets. But that's really getting down there to do that.
Yeah, that's really bad. I'm sorry.
I'm not sure about that.
Considering we don't have any crop, I mean, we rent out our land, so we aren't involved in crop markets or livestock markets. What we raise is for, people we sell to people for beef, fresh beef. But anyway, but that's kind of fun sometimes.
So far, it's sounding like everybody has a lot of different methods they use. Susan, how about you? What do you do when you get writer's block?
So I am a huge fan of Blake Schneider's beat sheet. And if you listen to, I think read his second book, I listened to it on audio while I was driving to and from work. He actually, or whoever narrated it, they went through scenes, the full book or a full movie, a full scene, and then they brought it even down to like a Mr. Clean commercial. So he's got 15 steps in his beat sheet. If you've never seen it, it's a great outlining tool that can be scaled up or scaled down really easily. But he broke it all the way down into a commercial level. So, you've got 30 seconds there. There's not much of a story there. So it helps me take that scene that I had outlined previously, because I'm an obsessive I'm a project manager. I'm an obsessive outliner. So I have every scene laid out before I even start writing the book. But I will sit down with the little summary of the scene that I wrote out and a blank beat sheet, and it has pushed me through every single time, because it gets you the theme that's labeled out in your scene. It actually walks you through a mini arc of a story, and it's really easy. I have never had it fail on me. So when I've needed it, that's where I go. That's my go-to. I too need quiet, nobody around, no social media, no email, no phone, all of that stuff. But I tend to wake up, my characters tend to wake me up about 4:30 in the morning, and then I get up and I write at that time. And if I am stuck with actually what to write next, I'll pull out that beat sheet. Sometimes I use it just on a regular basis anyway.
So let's talk about style. Let's say you could talk to somebody anonymously about your own work. How would you describe your writing style to this other person? And we will start with Sarah.
Yeah, this was a hard question for me because I really had to think about it. But I write usually from a first person present tense. So I'm kind of in the moment, and I try to really get into the heads of my characters and how they would speak. So my writing is how my characters would speak. And so when I went to graduate school, I was not writing young adult fiction. I was writing short stories, literary short stories. And one of my professors there, Terry Davis, had read one of my stories and said, have you ever tried writing for, young adult fiction? Because I really think you have the voice for it. And I had not, and I resisted it actually for several years. And I was out of school probably about 3 years before I started reading more young adult fiction again, and tried my hand at it, and I really loved it. So I feel like I try to really get into the heads of my characters, and then my writing style is how 16, 17-year-old would speak. So it's pretty varied. My sentence structures vary. Some are really short and really basic, and some are more lyrical, or I have a tendency to write these sort of one sentence paragraphs, which get edited out a lot. So I even have in my first book, the last thing you said, I even have a one sentence chapter, which didn't get edited out, which that's my favorite chapter. I love it. It was the easiest to write. No, just
Short and sweet.
Nice.
All right. Braven, how about you?
Well, definitely had trouble with this question because at first I wasn't sure exactly what was supposed to be the answer. Because originally, when I was kind of mentally thinking about it, I'm like, winging it, does that count as like a writing style? Like, I wasn't sure, like drafting, winging it, just seeing what happens. And then the more I thought about it, I'm definitely a first person narrative. And I've tried present tense, so it's like a weird flip flop between like it had happened, so past and present kind of thing. When I actually first was writing, I had never done and greatly disliked first person. So I don't know if it was just more of a connectivity thing for myself or it was kind of removing myself from the scene that helped me to write it again at first. But now I just love the emotional connection and the like further exploration of, okay, so you have your character, but like how would you react? But then how would they react kind of thing. Um, I love a good angst scene, so I don't know what that says about me as a person, but like I like some angst. So writing in first person also kind of like brings that out a little bit more of like how it connects on a different level and how it could connect. Uh, so I mean we're winging it plus first person plus it's a little darker, so we're just kind of seeing what happens.
Nice. All right. So next, Kirsten, what do you have to say about this?
Well, basically, of my 2 fiction books that so far, they're very dialogue driven. Lots of dialogue. Well, it takes place in the back corner of a coffee shop between 2 people chit-chatting, so very dialogue driven. But the short story that I contributed to the Cook to Death series, Volume 4, Cold Cuts, basically it's a anthology of murders that come with recipes. So it's fun, but it works and it's a really fun series. That one was mostly internal thoughts, motivation, and resolution, which was a nice change for me from the dialogue-driven manuscript. And yeah, I think rather than being in the moment having a chat at a table in the coffee shop and pages and pages of dialogue, there were probably 12 spoken sentences out of a 5,000 word story because everything happened inside this character's head, and I thought that was so much fun. So I hope that my future books kind of go along in that regard. I mean, yeah, so dialogue driven and now all internal thoughts.
Kind of one extreme to the next, huh?
Yeah, there's no middle ground with me. It's either black or white. There you go.
Lydia, how would you describe your writing to someone else anonymously?
Well, I think mine is sort of right now, a crossing over from my scientific writing, which is there's never an I or me or you in anything you report. It's just the facts. And so it's descriptive. You describe what you've done and results. So now I'm learning to put in more dialogue, and I'm finding I like to do that. I'm getting more and more of it in, and I like it. But it's been a challenge. I mean, I thought I had it okay until I learned through editing that it needed more. And I have one sentence paragraphs too because that's what was suggested in the manuscript. So I'd go with it. I mean, because I don't even have an English kind of major. They didn't teach us how to write anything but facts when you're in biology and chemistry and mathematics. So, it's a transition. It's a big transition, and I'm hoping I'm moving in the right direction to be more descriptive than factual in a lot of this stuff. Just, descriptive in the fact that I'm adding conversation to add to the scene rather than facts to add to the scene.
Nice, and it sounds like you're liking it so far.
Oh, I'm loving it.
And don't worry, everyone needs an editor, a second, third, fourth pair of eyes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Susan, what do you have to say about this topic here?
So in my fantasy, I like to describe it as visual, sensory, and evocative. And what I mean like by that is whether it be first or third person, it's usually a close point of view. And it's walking with one character at a time. So when I write, I strive to embed a lot of, well, this is kind of what the character is thinking at the time, but I don't always give exactly how they're feeling because I kind of want their actions and their more logical thoughts to allude to those feelings, because I want the reader, and this is challenging the reader, I want the reader to step back and say, if I were in this situation, how would I feel? So I want to drive those feelings from the bottom up with the rest of the story, the rest of the language structure, all and the scenery. So for example, something that I would tend to do is if I'm writing a scene in a restaurant and there's tension between two of the characters, I might have a plate dropped in the background and crash. So just something to hint that there should be more underneath, but not necessarily put that in black and white on the page. So that's kind of where I strive to write in my fantasy. When I switch over to my contemporary, I am very short, to the point. I make it very crisp because I want that story to move. I think my readers, when they end up reading a contemporary novel, I think they're looking to plow through those novels. It's not a literary fiction, it's contemporary romance or contemporary current fiction. So I've seen many of those readers that are putting out 3 books a week as far as reading goes, and they're looking to drive through it. So I want to keep that prose a little more snappy and a little more witty and moving through to the plowing through that story. Every scene needs to have a point that's going to drive that story toward the end goal. So those are really where my 2 styles that I fall back on. I've pushed it a little bit. Kirsten, you mentioned all internal, not really much dialogue. I wrote one short story. It's about 8,500 words. And I think there's 1 word of dialogue in it. And when I went back and read it, I cried. My daughter cried. My writing group cried. But I haven't gone anywhere with it though. I don't know. It's so
Sounds
different
like a success.
it's so different from what I normally write. I'm like, I'm a little
Yeah.
nervous about that one. I should probably submit it somewhere and see if anybody
Oh,
else likes it.
Definitely. Definitely.
But so yeah.
All right. Yeah, it seems like we got some good advice out of this question. A lot of different responses. It kind of goes into the next question pretty well. If any of you have any writing quirks, either things that stay in the final version or things that end up getting edited out, maybe phrases that you use a lot, or anything like that. We'll start again with Sarah.
I mentioned one of my quirks, which is the 1-sentence paragraph, which sometimes my agent for sure is like, you need to hold on to these so that they really come and have the impact that you want them to. So don't overuse them. And so sometimes before it even gets to my editor, my agent and I have kind of worked through and worked out some of those so that there aren't as many. I would say otherwise, I have a lot of crutch words, I guess, or words that I overuse, and one of those is just. And so before I send it to anyone, I do find and see exactly how I've used, and then try to work through some of those and get rid of those. Otherwise, with my first book, I wrote dual POV. a male and a female character. And when that book was done, I swore I would never do it again. And my second book was just one POV. And now I have another book that I'm working on that comes out next fall, and that is dual POV. I don't know how that happened.
That's how the story came about, right?
That's right.
All right. Yeah, and that control find can be really, really valuable tool. All right, next up, Raven.
Well, so I said about writing in first person, so first person point of view and everything like that. So I definitely notice when I'm first writing and drafting, however it happens, I use just I a lot. Like I did this, I did that. And then you don't really, I think, realize how much, at least went for a first person perspective, that you're using it until you go back and start reading it to yourself. And like everything, even like every new paragraph or however you're looking at it is I. And you're just, wow, I'm just using this word a lot. Like I didn't vary any of the sentences. It's just I. And then I'm also notorious, regardless of what draft I'm on, for switching tenses. And I haven't figured out why. I don't know if it's in my head because I'm playing it out that I think it should be first person. But then my brain's like, no, you must switch it to past. And then so it becomes a past tense. But both of those are just notorious. So before anybody even sees it, at least definitely for like the first few drafts, I got to take out all those I's. And then afterwards, tenses wise, it just kind of, hopefully whatever happens is what tense it just like picked and go from there.
Do you use anything to help you catch those?
The tenses or the I's? Because both would be lovely as in terms of advice.
Because I know Pro Writing Aid and
Okay.
like AutoCrit, some of those tools will help in that
Yeah,
space.
I actually
I've
don't
used
use
those.
that. Okay, I'll definitely look it up.
Yeah, because it'll just highlight it all for you, and then you can go back and decide which ones to keep and which ones to. Makes it really easy. It's better than a control find because.
Oh yeah, because it's going to be everywhere at that point. Yeah.
Right.
Tense swapping. It can get tricky.
Yeah. Sorry, Chelsea.
I'm her editor, so yeah, that's
my bad.
It's okay. Everyone needs an editor. All right, Kirsten, you're up next.
All right. Well, Chelsea is also my editor. And okay, here we go. I've been told that I don't put enough, if any at all, of character descriptions into my story. I figure with enough of the inner monologue and the external dialogue, people will get to, they'll put together what the character descriptions look like. I mean, to put in what the color of a sweater is, or they were, average height or medium build, or they were wearing a hat, I could care less. Chelsea, on the other hand, we've gone around with this. And
it's part of your style now.
Yeah, see, to me, all of that's just filler. I mean, between what's talked about and what's happening and the different, anywho, so I need to work on that. I will point out, though, that I've had several readers, bookstore owners, librarians, etc., read my books, and they all said that right off the bat, there were no character descriptions or very little descriptions, but they said, but from the story and what was said and divulged, etc., they were able to put whatever their character wanted to look like, or they already knew someone like that in their heads, and they really enjoyed the story. So I'm just saying. But yeah, that's my quirk. That's my one thing that Chelsea and I have gone around on, because I really don't care if the person's wearing a hat or they have brown hair. That has nothing to do with the story. I'm, just the facts, and I bop it along.
Funny.
But
I'm almost the opposite.
Yeah.
And in my current work, I'm trying really hard to be very minimalistic on that. And just let it come through other subtleties. But on my first books, I was very descriptive. So that's an interesting difference in styles.
Well, yeah, Chelsea would like what you write, because she gets after me on what I write.
It's been a while since I've edited your stuff.
Well,
so
that's because I will do everything under the sun other than what I'm supposed to. But that deadline I was talking about, that's coming up soon, and really, I got work to do. Okay, so there you go.
It's a legitimate approach. It's a style. It's good.
A little
All right.
quirky of a style, but there you go.
Yeah, everyone has their quirks. Lydia, what writing quirks do you have? Do you know?
Well, I don't know about quirks, but one of the things I like to do is, especially in the middle grade reader books, have the reader identify the speaker by what he says. In one of the books, the character always says the same thing, like absolutely or precisely. And so you never had to say, well, Edward said that, because everybody knows that's Edward's word. So I've used that a lot in the middle grade readers. But now in the first of the cozy mysteries, a guy is identified because he wears a hat. And I didn't describe a lot of them to begin with, but description of some of the characters as being scruffy or whatever comes from the observation of people around him. So I think that I don't know that I have any, maybe more than maybe 3 in that whole book that is actually a paragraph that said, this is so-and-so and this is what he looks like and blah, blah. I don't think I do. I think they're all just other people describe them. And that's kind of the way I kind of like it, but that may change. I'm still evolving here, into something other than a scientific writer of facts and figures.
Yeah, always evolving. That's good. Susan, how about you? Do you have any quirks?
I am a language nerd. So I tend to go, in my fantasy work especially, I tend to go a little overboard there, and I've had to pull back on quite a bit of my language building so that people can understand it a little better. I've learned a lot about how to hint at what a word meaning is outside of dialogue while they use the language that they're dealing with inside of dialogue. And then I've done a lot of just straight cutting words out that really people don't need to see. So that's I think it's more of a fantasy genre type quirk. But along with that, I also have a thing for names. And almost all of my names have some kind of meaning. Not all of them, but most of them do. An example that my very first editor caught me on is my main character in the Katerin Tales. She had a cat at the beginning of the story before she went through a portal behind me. And she named it Sam the Siamese. And every single time I referred to that cat, I called it Sam the Siamese. And I would do that with my pets too. Like I have Knox the Dachshund, my little mini dachshund, my wiener dog. And I talk about him as Knox the Dachshund. So she hated it. My editor absolutely hated it. And I do that repetitively. And I've had people tell me that some of the names that I choose are hard on the tongue or hard to relate to because, and it's not necessarily all in the fantasy genre. One of my contemporary romance novels, I used the name Celt, C-E-L-T, and it in Celtic, it can be pronounced Celtic or Celtic, and I pronounce it Celt. It doesn't really matter. You could say Celt if you want to, but I had a couple people get really hung up on that. But it was intended to give his background of being Irish. And the female character in that, his sister, her name is Boo, and that's short for Boudica, who is one of the Irish war heroes, female Irish war heroes from way back when. So a lot of times people get hung up on some of those because they're sensing something, I think, but they're not really grasping the full meaning. So usually throughout the story, I'll tell you at some point, but that one, that can be a hang up, especially for critiquers, not necessarily for editors. The quirks like Sam the Siamese, those get edited out, but.
Great. Does anybody else have anything to say then on the topic of naming your characters?
I love naming my characters so much. I really take joy in naming my characters, but when I name them, it has to be their name. So like when I'm researching, which again, in terms of like a quirk, or even if it would translate into another language as like she's black haired, or she really likes a certain, like if she's musical, so then like her name kind of like reflects that. Either way, I love a backstory with a name, and I love like a connection with it that may not be obvious right away. So in Shadow Speak, all the names that I have some kind of meaning, even if it's just really small of a hint. So I was like, yes, Susan, I understand. Like,
Yes,
I love,
yes.
and then I like writing where like you name a pet. Like I love, like my dog's name's Atlas, but like he has a meaning with his name. So then, in any pets or anything that comes up in a story, automatically I'm like, okay, well, like I call my dog like 8 different things. And then if he's in trouble, it's like Atlas Blaze, which is his middle name. So then in a story when I'm writing, I'm like, this cat, all right, Tabitha, like, are you serious right now? What are you doing? And people are like, are you talking to your cat like that? I'm like, yes, I am. Like,
Yes.
it happens. So we'll see where it goes with that. But yeah, so I can relate.
Fun.
Any other stuff to say on naming? No? Okay.
I'll just add one thing. My husband reads mine and he says, I think you date yourself because some of the names you pick for your characters are older names. So I had to explain to him one day, the woman is 60, 70 years old. This name fits her. Okay.
Dang it.
Yeah, I've done a lot of looking up names by period when I start writing contemporary, because you start thinking about, okay, well, I'm writing a story about a 30-year-old man and woman, but what are the big names during that time? Because if you think about what like I looked this one up earlier today, 1990, Sophie and Jacob were the top 2 names. That would make them 30 now. So I do a lot of looking up that way if I'm writing contemporary also, because you want to get something that resonates. You don't want to have something that sounds too old or too young, because if you use some of the popular names now, it's going to be off. Or even if I use like what I thought was popular when I named my daughter, who's 22, it would be a little bit young. So like a Mackenzie would be young for somebody who's 30, 32.
What sorts of scenes are easiest for you to write, and what ones are the hardest that maybe inspire some of that writing block that you talked about earlier? We'll start again with Sarah.
I think the easiest scenes for me are the scenes where characters are arguing. Dialogue comes pretty naturally for me, and so like I said before, I like scenes that have a little bit of tension in them. Also, the more romantic scenes are easier to write. I would say the hardest scenes to write are the ones that stem from some sort of personal experience. So with my first book, The Last Thing You Said, it is about 2 characters who are dealing with a shared grief. And so while I was writing that book, I went back to my journals from high school, which is, fun in itself. But I had a friend who died when we were juniors. And so going back and reading some of those journal entries and the newspaper articles and that sort of thing. So really kind of digging in to those scenes and feeling the character's grief, which was so, similar to mine. Those were difficult. In my second book, the character experiences some different pressures and anxieties. And it's interesting because any time that I was working on some of those scenes with her anxiety, like my leg would be bouncing up and down, where I was like physically feeling what she was feeling. And so I think that some of those scenes are a little bit harder to write and more easily avoided. I tend to procrastinate on some of those. So
The ones that hit too close to home.
yes, exactly.
Breathe, how about you?
I would actually say the ones that hit too close to home, I find are actually the easiest ones to write. And I think it's more of in my head, kind of like an anxiety, like kind of like, I guess it just stems from like a personal experience. So it kind of like I know maybe what the character is going through, or I can kind of relate enough to it. So a lot of the scenes for me where like it's kind of like an internal reflection, or kind of maybe an angst or a romance, like anything like that. It kind of depends on what the mood's being set, but normally I'm okay with it. The harder ones I actually find are writing are fight scenes, which I guess could be the dynamics of everything. So like who's doing this, and then like what happens if like a character like falls to the ground, like do I remember them a little bit later, like, or where there's multiple characters, so maybe not fight scene per se, but if there's multiple characters, even if they're not the main character, so you have like 5 characters, they're all sitting around like playing a game or something, and then you kind of get into your main character and like the scene's playing out, but then you totally forgot about at least one of the other characters. Like they sat down and then they just didn't say absolutely anything, like the entire 2 scenes, and you're kind of like, did I have them get up? Did I remember them at all? Like they just literally sat there and were kind of like, it's okay, guys, you keep going without me. So I guess multiple people is kind of hard, as well as like the fight scenes in terms of when everything's going, like, did I block my face or did they want to do that, and see how it goes.
Yeah, the ones that are maybe more technically difficult.
Yeah, like a technical verse. Yeah, like, okay, they're bleeding from like a cut on their face, but they can magically see everything that happens, and like the arrow that's coming towards them from like 20 yards, somehow they're kind of like, oh no, I got this, I can dodge, rather than they're like hurt. Kind of.
Yeah, everyone's got their technical difficulties. Kirsten, how about you?
All right, scenes that are easiest for me to write: awkward, dry comedy, and uncomfortable scenes of mental turmoil and anguish. So, good fun. Basically, dark, evil, sadistic, taking people to a dark place without them completely comprehending the direction they're traveling. But I make it interesting, the kind where you can take pictures along the way and think you're having fun. Yeah, there you go. The things that are hardest for me to write, though, I will never write a romance novel. Just not my gig. In Corner Confessions, a hint of a romantic relationship peaked, and I had readers that were like, oh, this is cool, I wonder where this is going to go. I got rid of that hassle by the second book. Had nothing to do with anything.
All right, Lydia, how about you? Are there some scenes that are easier for you to write?
Well, I like writing descriptive scenes where the main character, he's not with anybody or she's not with anybody to talk to, so you don't have dialogue, but try to build some suspense or something around that character. I like to do those kind of scenes. But the one, and then, by the same token, the ones that are the hardest obviously are the extreme violent ones and sexually graphic ones. I can't do those, but I think that, and the other thing I like to write scenes that will lead you up to a point and drop you. Now you think this is the guy that's guilty, and then all of a sudden you've got somebody else that's possibly guilty, and try and put a few more twists and turns before the book ends. I like to do that.
Yes, she does. I can attest to that. Being like, what?
I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, exactly.
My comment would be, what?
Good. And Susan, how about you? What kind of scenes are easiest to write, that you like to write, and what are the more difficult ones?
So my favorite kind of scenes to write are anything that are descriptive and sensory. So I actually like writing sex scenes because they are very tactile. And there's lots of emotion plus physical feeling at the same time. So I enjoy driving characters into new situations where they haven't been before, so that you then can explore how that pushes them and drives them in different directions. I'm a romance writer, so the new connection between the people, kissing scenes, or writing that first kiss scene in the book is my favorite, absolutely my favorite. And then as far as fantasy goes, you get that in a different way because they're exploring different parts of this world that you're building and you're introducing the readers to. So anything that's really dealing with everything that they see, hear, feel, smell, taste, and then what does it do to them inside, and how does it build that tension internally? Internal tension is probably a really good way to describe it. So there's a variety of things that I have that do that. One of them is in Kataran Tales, my main character goes to, it's a portal fantasy, so she ends up going into a clothier or a dressmaker once she arrives in this new world, and the woman's absolutely loony, crazy. So she it's kind of funny to watch her cope. And my main character, again, is one of these strong women who think they have it all figured out. And to watch her cope with that craziness was just a riot to write. It was so much fun. I flew through it. It was like 4,000 words in half an hour. I mean, it was a blast to write. And I read it and I laughed out loud. So those kinds of things are my favorite. I have to second Raven on the fight scenes or multiple character scenes, especially when you've got like dialogue with 5 or 6 characters, and not forgetting about this one sitting on the end of the table and him dropping off the face of the earth. That happens to me so much. It's just keeping track of all the logistics. I guess all those little details are what get away from me a little bit. When I'm doing with 1 or 2 characters and it's very tight, I do that well, but dealing with broad casts at one time, it's tough. Like I said, I'm trying to finish up my current work in progress, which involves a big battle at the end, and there's different races and different factions coming together, and dragons a dragon battle happening in the sky. So it's like all happening at once, and everything's chaos, and trying to keep track of the logistics of that has been really tough. Finishing this, I'm down to like the last 12,000 words that I've got to probably put on paper, and finishing it, those particular scenes and tying a bow on them has really been a tough thing for me. But I'm hoping to get that done here in the next month or so and have it off to the editor.
All right. Yeah, that sounds like a really complicated scene to write. I'm imagining kind of one of the giant fight scenes like from the Lord of the Rings,
Kind of.
Yeah, multiple battles and dragons and
Mm-hmm.
All right. So moving on here. All of you have sort of found the genres that you like best, that you're most comfortable writing in. If you had the time and the energy to branch out into a different genre that you've never written in before, what would it be and why? And we will start again with Sarah.
Yeah, time. That's a huge thing, isn't it? So right now I write primarily young adult fiction, and I would really like to branch out and write romance for older adults. So characters in their provisional adulthood of their 20s, early 30s. So I think too, and I kind of laughed when 1990 was 30 years ago, because that isn't possible. But I have an idea for a story that is set in the mid 90s, and I guess that would be historical. Historical romance.
Getting
then.
there.
Oh dear. That really puts it there when you say historical
Ouch.
romance and that.
Right? I
Oh
know.
boy.
That hurts a lot.
hurts. It
Yeah.
does.
Yeah. All right, Raven, how about you?
So I write originally, actually, I was intending to do a YA, and it just kind of morphed into something, a new adult. So new adult, like dark fantasy, and I just love kind of like a little bit of the darker aspect of things, more like mental mind games kind of. I actually would love to do something like completely horror and see like just full on scare to see what it'd be like, but at the same time, I'm so used to certain other quirks that I don't know if it would slip in or not, and that would probably be okay. I also would love to do a romance, just a straight romance, just like something really cute. I'm not even sure age wise, but just something like that. And I actually had in college started something. It was basically channeling myself as being like a fangirl and kind of seeing her favorite actor and then seeing how it went, if they met up kind of thing. But I'm happy with where I'm at for the dark fantasy. So I don't know if it's going to what is time, if time would actually allow me to do something like that. Maybe later.
What is time?
Yeah, what is time? I don't know.
Kirsten, how about you?
Well, I'm gonna pull Ray out on this. You have children's books too. And I'm looking forward to those coming out.
I do. Well, it's kind of hard. Going off of that, the children's wise, it was really hard when I was writing it in college, because my teacher was like, "You're writing for an older child, and it's a picture book." I'm like, I know. So then I'd go and try to like cut out some of the stronger words, and nope, still writing for a different child. So we're trying.
we'll get to those, but
yeah.
Anyway, for me, since I don't tend to stay in one genre, because really anything that interests me, I'll just write it down. And if it goes somewhere, great. And if it doesn't, we'll get to it. So we all know that I would probably never write a romance. I can pretty much tell you firm right there, it's not going to happen. But educational would be interesting. I really had to sit here and think, what genre would I write besides, what I haven't already? So yeah, educational. And now I don't know what I would educate anyone on. There's one. I don't know, not a good answer, but there you go. If I ever find something that I can educate someone on, then I'll write it. And if not, then never mind.
12-step evil mommy program.
Yes. Oh, that is true. My 12-step evil. It was my 12-step.
That's a great title. You should totally write that.
Yeah, the 12-step evil queen. And for all the viewers out there who don't know, Chelsea's my daughter. And back when she was little, we watched all the Disney, the Snow White and all the movies and stuff. And she would ask me different questions. I'd be like, well, that's part of the 12-step evil queen program. And so she was on the 12-step evil princess in training program when she was little. I shouldn't probably write any educational how to have a healthy mental never mind.
No child rearing books in your future?
Yeah, no child rearing books.
Yeah, it can be satirical. It's all good.
People could see it satirical. I would be like, but it's true. Never mind. Anyway, okay, continue.
So maybe it's good you don't have the time and the energy to.
Yeah, it probably is. Yeah.
Lydia, how about you? What other genres would you be interested in?
I'm just going to let you know that I got a message that my internet's unstable, so I don't know if I'll stay in for long. But I have one historical fiction, which I absolutely love to do because it involved research. And I'd like to do another one of those. But I think for right now, the only other one that I'm going to send to Chelsea one of these days is I have a book for its grade schoolers, and it's a feel-good book. No matter what you look like, it's a positive thinking kind of book, you know, and it'd be something that would have to be illustrated and all that, but I got to get through the Thad Wheeler series first. But anyway, I don't know if I would go to any more of that, but it's just that I have it because I wrote it for my youngest son. In fact, that's just a little side note. The only reason I started writing middle grade readers is my oldest son started school being able to read, and he was very disappointed about what kind of books there were for boys to read when he got to grade school. So I wrote all these, but he's never looked at any of them anyway. So he's got children of his own who are too old for him now. But anyway, but I if I could do anything again, it would, I need to find the right historical fiction book to write and spend some time on that.
Research, huh?
Love it. My whole life, that was my whole life. I mean, I never wanted to teach. It's 37 and a half years in research, so yes.
Yeah, it makes sense that it would carry over to your writing interests.
Well, the very first book I wrote does have some science tricks in it for the kids to use to solve a problem. So that's as
Okay.
close as I've come to adding that background into my novels.
Sneaky. All right, Susan, how about you?
So I will probably, unless I, make a whole lot of money and hire some personal assistants, I will probably not officially branch out into other genres. Between romance and fantasy, it keeps me pretty busy. But that being said, I do play with some subplots in those genres specifically. So I've also, like I said, next year will be a big year for releasing books for me. I have a Fae detective series coming out too. So that one's pretty fun. It's kind of dark, kind of contemporary, kind of fantasy all together. It's got think of Castle and Beckett, the fairy being Castle. So mystery, detective, cozy mystery kind of thing would be fun. There's some historical fiction would be a really interesting feat for me. I would probably bake that into some of my romance. So the primary would be romance with a subplot that would be historical, or the setting would be historical. So that would be my take on things that I would like to explore more.
Well, you certainly got Ray's attention when you brought it. I saw her go, oh, really?
Tell me more.
I saw that.
Yeah, I used to binge watch Castle with my roommate. She actually was studying criminal justice, and it was kind of funny because we started watching it because it was kind of what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, we just got hooked. We were kind of like, but okay, so you can be her, and then I'll be Castle, because like the writer kind of thing, since I was majoring in creative writing, and we had way too much fun with it. But yes, I would enjoy that.
That's kind of the feel, that or the Bones and Booth.
Yeah, that was too. I stayed with that for a while too.
Yep, those are the two kind of inspirations for that series.
That's a great series.
So in my case, my TV teacher is Murder, She Wrote.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I've watched that.
Watch it all the time because they have a problem, a murder, whatever they got to solve, and they got to get it done in an hour. So it's very concise, and you got to know how to drop in clues, and that's
that's a classic cozy mystery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's my excuse for watching that show at night. So.
That and Perry Mason was a good one too.
Yes.
Are there, Kirsten or Sarah, are there any TV shows that you've drawn inspiration from?
Sarah,
I watch football and hockey. That's it.
Hey,
Or I did watch a lot of Disney shows when my kids were younger. Good luck, Charlie. Still missed that one.
You know, the sports stars are huge in the romance genre. That's a great
true.
trope.
That's true.
Yeah, you go.
Personally, for me, anything TV, no, I have not had a TV in my house in 20 years.
Yeah, but you have Hulu.
I
You
have,
Netflix.
well, but the Netflix, and so I'm not very current on that kind of stuff. I don't know. Okay, like what was it? Now this is my memory thing. House of Cards.
I haven't watched that one.
Oh, it's wickedly wonderful. But then again, that's that dark, going somewhere dark, and
Twisted.
bringing the person along with, and they're having a wonderful time and taking pictures and having a great time until they reach that destination. Then they're like, oh my gosh, where am I? I have fun with all the evil characters in like the Disney films. Again, I'm a very happy person, but but it's just that twisted mental torture. And it's not the angst kind of thing. It's the seriously putting yourself. Watch House of Cards. You'll see what I'm talking about right off the bat, and it hooks you in. I mean, you're like, Okay, so there you go. Personal dynamics and where people go and their decision making to get there is the most interesting to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we're gonna end with the 10-word story that I asked you guys to write ahead of time. I hope you guys had some fun with that. And we're actually gonna go in reverse order. So we'll end with Sarah. We'll start with Susan.
All right. So I actually did 2 because
Okay.
I write fantasy and romance. So I'll start with the fantasy. Kidnapped paramour Ekaterina returns to King Abelard to avert war.
Oh, okay. There's some story there. Well, obviously.
Yep. All right. The romance. Patisserie owner Julianne stumbles into her college fling on vacation.
Well, mine has nothing to do with any kind of writing that I'm doing, but it is pertinent to my life here. That stray orange cat who catches chipmunks is my friend.
I'm only laughing because I've heard about the stray orange cat, and I've sat in her her writing center eating cookies, and now I know where the cookies have come from. She had writer's block, but yeah, okay.
So yep, Kirsten, you are up next.
I'm next. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Satisfied with the result, I listened to the eulogy intently.
Oh,
Dark.
good. Dark.
I know, isn't it fun?
Let's take a picture.
Yeah, take a picture. You might see it in a book. You never know.
Yeah, these are fun little exercises. Raven.
Okay, mine's cute. I had fun with it. I put the bubble gum in Betty's hair. Sorry, Mom. It was for fun.
Oh, that's good.
It sounds like one of your future kids' books, maybe.
Yeah.
Sarah, we will end with you. What is your 10-word story?
He watched taillights fade into darkness as she drove away.
A couple different things that could be
I know,
happening
I'm like,
there.
come back.
Well, no, I just thought that's a perfect one to end on.
Yeah.
Because he's
It
driving
is.
away.
It is. Yeah.
And we've come to the end. Very good. Very good.
All right. So thank you all for your time today, panelists. It's been wonderful to hear your different perspectives and experiences with writing fiction. Audience, if any of you would like to learn more about these authors, or purchase their books, please visit the Deep Valley Book Festival website and click on authors. You will find a directory there of all the authors participating in the book festival this year. Thank you all for joining us today. Please like and share this video with your friends and family. In 15 minutes, Writing the Truth, the nonfiction and memoir writers panel will begin. Enjoy the rest of the 5th annual Deep Valley Book Festival and stay safe and keep on reading.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.